Welcome to Justice Matters. I am Denise George, Attorney General of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Justice Matters is a program aimed to inform, engage, and empower you with knowledge of Virgin Islands laws that affect our everyday lives and our community. This includes insightful discussions with special guests on the laws and related topics so you can be empowered with knowledge. Today's topic is identity theft and how to prevent it. We'll have a lively discussion with one of our own top criminal white-collar prosecutors on what you can do to help protect yourself and loved ones from identity thieves. Identity theft happens when someone uses your personal identifying information, such as your name and social security numbers or bank account numbers and more, to steal from you. With that information, identity thieves drain bank accounts and open new credit cards, get utility service, steal people's tax refunds, get medical treatments and insurance, or even give police your name and address when they're arrested. Identity theft can happen to anyone, and it is a growing problem in the Virgin Islands and in the United States. And the pandemic relief made it even worse as identity thieves targeted relief checks and unemployment benefits. Theft of benefits in 2020 was up a whopping 2.920% over 2019. Overall, the Federal Trade Commission received 1.4 million complaints of identity theft from consumers in 2020, and that was up 113% from the year before. So what is identity theft? First of all, identity theft is a crime in the Virgin Islands. Our Virgin Islands Criminal Code under the Identity Theft Prevention Act states a person commits the offense of identity theft when he or she knowingly uses any personal identifying information or personal identifying document of another person to fraudulently obtain credit, money, goods, services, or other property or things of value. Personal identifying information under VI criminal law includes a person's name, a person's address, date of birth, a person's telephone number, a person's driver's license number or other identification card, a person's social security number, an employment identification number, the maiden name of a person's mother, bank account number, credit card or debit card number, any other numbers or information that can be used to access a person's financial resources or to identify a specific individual. A personal identification document that the criminal law refers to means a birth certificate, a driver's license, a state identification card, a public, government, or private employment identification card, a social security card, a firearm registration card, and other government-issued identification documents. Aggravated identity theft is also a crime. That is, when a person commits the offense of identity theft against a person who is 60 years of age or older, a dependent adult, or a person less than 18 years of age. A person convicted of identity theft in the Virgin Islands faces up to 15 years imprisonment depending upon the facts and circumstances of the theft. On the other hand, aggravated identity theft of any amount is a felony punishable by a fine of up to $10,000 and a term of imprisonment of up to 15 years for the first conviction, and if convicted a second time of aggravated identity theft, they shall be punished by a term of imprisonment of a minimum of 6 years and a maximum of 30 years. VI law mandates law enforcement agencies to accept reports and conduct investigations of identity theft, and they are required to expedite a determination with respect to that, as well as the courts are required to make an expedited determination once it gets to court. That is for the protection of our community and for victims of identity theft. While there are remedies in the law, if you are a victim of identity theft, as the old saying goes, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. The good news is that we can do a lot to help protect ourselves and our loved ones from identity thieves. Joining us now is Lynn Pryor, an Assistant Attorney General at the Department of Justice, who now holds a position as Director of White Collar Crime. Attorney Pryor, welcome to Justice Matters.
Thank you for having me.
Just give a nutshell description of what is identity theft or identity fraud.
Identity theft can cover a number of different scenarios in which someone's identity, their name, their address, their birth date, their social security number, or any other identifying information can be used by another individual to take advantage of that person.
What are the ways that we can protect ourselves from identity theft?
One of the most important things that I would recommend is to photocopy everything that you have in your wallet, any of your identifying information. And that is preventative, and it's also beneficial to you if you do find yourself a victim of financial crime or identity theft. That includes account numbers on the front of any credit cards or bank cards. Plus, it includes the back of the cards that has contact information where you can reach out to the financial institutions and correct any fraudulent transactions that may have taken place on your account. Those are things that you would not necessarily have saved somewhere unless you did make a photocopy of these things. So if you lost your wallet, if you lost your purse or any of those things, and you find yourself in a situation where someone else has physical control of your financial information, having those account numbers and phone numbers will help you correct that in a much more timely manner.
Any other tips on what we can do on a regular basis as far as adjusting our behavior in order to protect ourselves?
I think the most important thing is being aware and being conscious of what you have in financial institutions, where your money is. If there are any transactions that you didn't approve of, you need to be able to correct those as quickly as possible. So monitor your accounts very closely. Make sure that you are aware of your surroundings if you're on the phone and you're giving out financial information or any type of identifying information, because you never know who may be listening. You never know who may be looking over your shoulder if you're at an ATM or entering your PIN number on a machine in a store. I think it's very important for people to know that if something sounds too good to be true, it typically is too good to be true. So don't fall victim to those people who call promising that you've won the Publishers Clearinghouse or the International Lottery when you didn't even play those things.
And then they ask you for information. Well, give us your bank account so we can send you your money, or give us your birth date and social security number. And they ask for those kinds of things, and that's how they get, they get to steal the identity. Is that right?
It happens a lot. Yeah. And people are very excited if they hear they've won money or they have opportunity to gain something in some way. So it's very tempting to give out your information in order to get something big in return. You have to be very cautious. And if you don't initiate a phone call or a computer transaction with someone, please do not give out your identifying information or account information to anyone unless you solicit it. If you go online to make a purchase, then you can pretty much be assured that your account information is going to be protected. If they seek you out, that's when you should be concerned. I always recommend asking for their name and phone number so that you can call them back to verify if it is in fact the person that they represent themselves to be. Oftentimes they are not. And,
Right.
and that will stop a fraudulent transaction in its tracks.
I'm looking at a few tips here, and one of the things is buy a cross-cut type shredder. Why that?
Shredding is highly recommended if you are discarding any documents with any of your account information, personal identifying information, and even those credit card offers that you get in the mail. If you just toss them in the trash, someone could very easily pick them up out of the trash, apply for that credit card in your name with their address so that it's sent directly to them and you never know about it.
Yeah. Then there's something called dumpster diving, and I guess that's what you're talking about, that people actually dive into dumpsters and to steal people's information. Is that right? Is that what you're talking about there?
It absolutely happens. Dumpster diving, it doesn't necessarily have to be someone physically diving in a dumpster. They could literally reach into a trash bag that you've discarded in a public place and obtain that information straight out of your trash. If you shred it, it's very unlikely that anyone would be able to piece the little shredded portions back together and gain your information.
And included in some of the tips that you provided to me earlier also is that it says get all your checks delivered to your bank. What's about that? Explain that.
Well, particularly if you have a mailbox in front of your residence, it's very easy for people to gain access to your mail if you have something that is, in front of your home where your mail is delivered. And if someone were to see a package being delivered, they're certainly, tempted oftentimes to go and take that package. And particularly if it's checks, they're able to take those checks and write them and get as much money as they possibly can before you're ever aware of it. So having them delivered to the bank prevents that. You can pick them up at the bank. I also recommend not having any of your really closely guarded information printed on those checks. Don't have your social security number printed on your checks. Don't have your driver's license number printed on there. Of course, you have to have an address. It's helpful if you have a P.O. box.
And then I see also you have cancel all credit cards that you do not use or haven't used in 6 months. Tell us about that one.
It is very easy to use someone's credit information without their knowledge. And particularly if it's a credit card that you haven't used and you aren't monitoring that account, you're not looking to see what charges may have been made or unpaid on your account. It's just another layer of protection that if you're not going to use those cards, there's no sense in keeping them around. If you do keep them in a secure location. I recommend that with all personal documents or credit or financial information that you have. I recommend having a safe, a fireproof safe is best, so that you can keep those documents in there and keep them protected from people that may be in your home legitimately, pest control people or maintenance workers or anyone who may be in your home. You just don't want them to have easy access to your documents.
Okay, and then I'm looking at another one of your tips, and it talks about not using your mother's maiden name as your password. And I got to say that a number of times I know of people who do that. So anyway, so tell us about that. Why not?
In fact, I think that was one of the first things that was used as password or a security question with most financial institutions. So I think people got accustomed to using that. It's also something that's very easily found out. Anyone that is trying to access your information could very easily find out what your mother's maiden name was and use that to open other accounts or to gain access to your current accounts. So I suggest using a very strong password. Sometimes they're very difficult to remember, but you can create made up words, things that you remember. And maybe it's just letters of initials or something like that that you remember using an at sign or an exclamation mark somewhere in there is always, an easy way to add to the strength of the password.
And I'm looking at this other tip, and it says, don't carry your birth certificate, social security card, or passport unless absolutely necessary. Talk about that a bit.
Certain times, of course, it would be necessary to have those documents with you. And we're not saying don't ever have them when you need them, but we've all lost things. And those are certainly documents that you don't want to lose or don't want someone to be able to access. Say you have them just stuck in a tote bag that you're carrying with you. You sit the bag down to walk away for a second and you come back. Someone could have very easily reached into that bag and gotten those documents. And those are items that can be used very easily to create new accounts, new identification. That is one of the big things that that is used in identity theft, is creating a new identification card that may have my picture on it, but your information. And if I were able to do that, then I could open an unlimited amount of accounts, financial or otherwise, in your name. And I've even seen it done where someone has created an identification card with someone else's identifying information on it in order to prevent from being charged with criminal conduct. For example, we had an individual who had several convictions for driving under the influence. So he was unable to obtain a driver's license legally. And he had an identification card made up with his photograph, someone else's name, and identifying information. So the next time he got arrested for driving under the influence, he was booked into the jail under this other person's name. He went to court and pled guilty as someone other than himself. Yeah. And the victim of that crime did not even know until the insurance company contacted him and said his automobile insurance had been canceled because of this conviction. So he was able to do a little investigation on his own and find out what had happened. And so it's not always financial transactions that they are stealing your identity for. It can be for avoiding detection. It can be for a various number of reasons, and it can happen to anybody. It doesn't discriminate. It can be any age, any race, any economic status, any ethnicity. In fact, the number of identity theft involving children has risen dramatically, and they are people who really are not active in protecting themselves. So as parents, we have to be very protective of our children's information as well.
And I like that because that's very important to mention, because there have been some cases where, in fact, it indicated that it's even better for the fraudsters to use children's social security numbers and other identifying information, their date of birth and everything, because sometimes they can get credit cards, take out credit cards and other things because there's no bad credit. You especially like a teenager, they don't have any bad credit, so they get a good credit rating, and they're able to take out credit cards, and then they use the credit cards and then throw them away. So that had been a kind of scheme that had been used with respect to that. So really, we do have to be. That's a very good point. We have to be vigilant about even protecting our children from identity fraud as well.
It is very, very crucial to monitor and protect your children's information as well as your parents or elderly relatives.
What happens if your identity is stolen? What are the steps that you recommend to be taken?
It happens to millions of people every year. In fact, I think the statistics now are about 1 in 3 people in the United States are affected by identity theft. So if you find that you're a victim yourself, the first thing that you need to do is contact law enforcement and any of the financial institutions that you determine may have been affected by this identity theft. You can send letters, you can make phone calls, you can send emails, all of the things that you do, document them so that as the time progresses, you know what steps that have been taken. There is an option to get your credit report for free once a year, every year at annualcreditreport.com. So I suggest everybody do that. That's another preventative measure. But if you see on your credit report that there are transactions or accounts that you're unfamiliar with, report them to the credit bureaus. There are 3 primary credit bureaus, and they are also kind of tasked and responsible for following through with any reports that are made to them.
Are things getting better? How are things getting with respect to what the new ways that we have in helping us to protect ourselves?
The bad news is that identity theft has gone way up. The good news is because of that, we're able to fight it much more effectively now. As you mentioned, financial institutions have fraud protection plans. They also have a lot of times alerts that they will send you if it appears that there is a transaction taking place that doesn't appear to be normal for your account. Because of the increased amount of identity theft, law enforcement and prosecutors are better able to assist you and to help not only prosecute the fraudsters for their criminal actions, but they're able to assist more in proving the case against them and in obtaining some restitution or reimbursement to the victims of these crimes.
Do you have any statistics on how bad identity theft is in this country?
You've mentioned some of the facts that I gave to you. I've been doing presentations on identity theft for at least a decade. And back when I first started this, it was hundreds of thousands of people maybe across the country that were affected. As of 2021, there were nearly 42 million people in the United States that were affected by identity theft. And that's about, a third of the people. I think children are one of the new demographics that are being affected. Young adults are probably accounting for the biggest percentage of people who are being affected because they are much more comfortable doing online transactions and maybe not as aware of the protective measures they should be using.
But if you are a victim of identity fraud, and you were talking about the increase in the amount of persons and everything that have been victims, do you think it's somehow related to the internet? And we use so many things, we do so many things online, we do so many purchases online. How has that impacted it? And is there a way that you can apply some of these types of protections specifically to internet or online transactions?
All ages use the internet. Online transactions, I would say, have definitely increased every year. And particularly during the pandemic, people were in their homes. They weren't out shopping in stores, so they were using online websites to do a lot of their shopping. So, of course, people had more access to their information. The people who are looking to do bad things found a better and more easier way to access people's information. But that is why you want to make sure that you have very strong passwords, that you are very careful about completing these transactions in private where no one else can see what you're entering on the screen, using your own personal devices and not someone else's, maybe using the internet just from your home and not in a public location where other people have access to that same internet that you're working off of, or that same IP address. And just being conscious. If you order something online, know about when it should arrive and monitor that, because not just are they using online information, but they may be able to know when a package is going to be delivered. So you want to keep an eye on that. And if you're expecting something, make sure that you check on that.
What about when you have to send your information, whether it's credit card information or other information, through the internet or online? What about, or how can you determine whether or not the information is protected through an encrypted site as opposed to one that is not?
There are a couple of different ways that companies are doing that now. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with what they call a Captcha, which may ask you to look at a series of pictures and click on each one that contains a traffic light or a train or whatever it may be. And that just ensures that it's an actual person sitting behind the computer making this transaction instead of a computer bot or something or someone else. Also, there's something called a two-step identification that can be used, and that would require you to put in a password and then maybe an additional security code or something to that effect. Also, when people are putting in credit card information online, now this didn't happen until recent years, where there's a 3-digit security code on the back of your credit card. So even if someone has access and is able to photograph the front of your card, they don't have that code.
Card, right, to see that 3-digit number. That's true. Is there anything that you can say, one thing that you want to leave with the audience today with respect to identity theft and protecting yourself?
If you do find yourself in this situation where you're a victim of identity fraud, don't lose hope, because there are a lot of improved methods of correcting that information now, and you're not alone. It happens to millions of people every year, and there are people out there that can and will help, and that is their job now, is to help you, the victim, to recover from whatever fraud's taking place.
Well, thank you so much for that. Those tips are very wise and definitely very helpful. Thank you so much for joining us on Justice Matters.
Thank you. Have a great day.
And thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Justice Matters.